That's all right. Ready for kick off. Good evening, welcome all. Hopefully my roller battery should start. So, welcome to this evening's Finance and Management meeting. We've got we've got no members of the public present. We're not expecting anybody, are we? Okay. So, to accept apologies for absence, we have got a few apologies in for tonight, but we've got Councillor Lyles, Councillor Fernandez and Councillor Kirby. Is anybody else passing on apologies? Okay. So,
you have to approve the reasons. So they've been given the reasons by email, and the committee has to approve the reasons without sharing it.
Okay. So you've had an update email that was sent out probably about an hour ago, was it? That gave reasons for all three members submitting their apologies. Are we happy to accept those and approve the reasons for absence? Okay. Can I have a proposer? Andy? And Mary, secondly. All in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. So, to receive members and officers' personal and disclosable pecuniary interests in items on the agenda. So, is there anything on the agenda that we need to be made aware of? Yes, Pat.
Can I declare an interest in item 232442 grants regarding item number 4 of that, sharing memories? My mum-in-law is one of the volunteers in sharing memories, and therefore I won't be available to make any comment on it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I need to declare an interest in item 42 grants 6th Q, which is and also at item 42 7.
Thank you. Do we have any more?
Declare an interest in the same grants at 6T Truckers Mission.
Do we have any more? Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on. So, to consider written requests for new DPI dispensations, are there any for this meeting?
So we just need to note revised DPIs for Councillor Ryler and Councillor Holmes, which was shared by email on the 16th of August. They will be redacted and put on the website in due course.
Thank you. Okay. So, to consider whether items on the agenda should be discussed in private session. I'm not sure there's anything. No. Okay. So we'll all be public. So, to confirm the minutes of the previous committee meeting, so to approve the minutes of the committee meeting held on the 12th of June, minutes numbered 23/24/16 through to 23/24/35 inclusive. So, are we happy to approve those minutes? So we've got Councillor Conley proposing and Councillor Wilson seconding. All in favour, please show. It's unanimous. Okay, so we can move on to the grant items. So, part 1, to note the updated rolling list of grants awarded. Okay. Rich, have you got anything to report on?
Only what I've written there, which before the assistant clerk started, I probably didn't have a lot of time to be chasing the grant evaluation forms, but I've got more time now. So that's one of the reasons I've added the column on the right hand side where I'm trying to chase people for their grant evaluation form. As you can see, there's still a lot of red there. I mean, you got about 20 sent to you, and there's another probably 10 or 15 on top of that that went to council or went to service provision. But you can see that it was a few weeks ago that I sent for them, while a few other people have replied, for example, we gave money for those scouts who will be storm blown in Korea, so we'll be getting their response in the next few weeks, I suppose. But they said that they haven't fulfilled theirs yet, so they haven't filled their report. But yeah, so that's basically what I was sharing, the column about the grant evaluation forms.
Is that normally a problem then? Yeah, as we get towards year end or something.
This is the first time we've done it really. I think.
We do ask grant applicants to respond to us, to let us know how
Yeah.
it's being used, and so throughout my time it's been very hit and miss as to whether they have done. But I think this is the first
We're trying
time
to do
we've
it
done
concertedly.
Yeah.
The grant form, the grant working group put together these forms, and this is the first chance I've really had to be chasing for it. And so obviously we haven't had a lot of use of it, so it's part of the reason to share it here is to whether we need to change any bits of it or the process or whatever.
Okay. We'll move on to the second part. So to note, the updated rolling list of grants against budgets for the current financial year.
So this is basically showing you what this committee's got for this meeting and for the next meeting. So you've got £19,905 in the projects and events budget, and then 53,000 in other community assets budget. So that's in the past. We kind of agreed that you could spend it all in one go. If you decided to get to spend it all in September, you could do that. But obviously, it's up to you as a committee to decide how you want to spend the money. Yeah, that's it.
Lovely. So we'll move on to part 3 now. So this is going to be the first grant application that we'll be considering for this current year, but also for this new council as well. So I think this is probably one of those where, if the committee's minded to do so, we'll be wanting to set it up on a multi-year basis with it being a recurring festival. So with that in mind, we can just put that to one side and we'll start off with the current grant application. We can then come back to that discussion. Okay. So,
Do you want to explain why we're doing it now, Councillor, rather than in the September meeting? It's probably worth sharing.
well, if you
Okay. So the reason we're doing it now rather than with the general cycle in September is that the event takes place before the meeting. So we thought it sensible that their grant be looked at outside of the normal pattern. That's really, and the same applies to the Sharing Memories grant.
So one of the issues with having 2 grant rounds a year is if that timing doesn't work particularly well for you, it causes an issue. And my particular concern is, well, both of these two have proactively said, can we apply? And we're looking at those. But there may be other organisations who think they've missed the grant round, or that the grant round won't work for them, and haven't been in touch and haven't asked, but if they had, they might have been here as well. So there's a bit for me where perhaps we also need to think about, well, how do we want to organise the grants in the future? Do we want to stick with 2 rounds? Do we want to have 4 rounds? Do we want to just open it up at each meeting? How many a year do we have? FNM? We're on 7. But we'll
How
also
many
use
meetings? do we
Yeah.
have? Yeah, about that, yeah.
But obviously, the budget meeting will be taken up with that. So I think it's something that we'll want to consider. But we'll move on with this Holmfirth Food and Drink Festival. So, do we have any comments that anybody would like to make on this application?
Just something that struck me as a little bit odd. I'm not saying I'm against or anything. But they said in 2022 we had a surplus of around 6k.
Just which page are you on?
on the application, page 3 is it? We managed to put on a very successful festival which actually generated a surplus of around 6k, which is great.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. In 2022, as well as building some much needed reserves, we were also able to give a donation of £500 in the Home Price Food Bank. Which, I just can't think, well, think about. We're giving a donation to them, and then they're making a donation to somebody else.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, we could argue, well, it's a good cause and it's something probably we would
Except that we
support.
don't give grants to charities.
So, in effect, we have done.
Mm.
I don't know whether that's an issue or not. Perhaps we need to make a point that
I think it's.
I would rather than carry that money forward personally, and then perhaps the next year they would have been saying we don't need as much from them.
Mm. Yeah.
And when you think where it could have gone, I mean, we might all support the food bank, but
Yeah.
it could have gone anywhere in theory, couldn't it?
We have encountered this issue previously with other festivals and events, and it has been that bit about. I don't think we've ever had any clear policy or expectation about what happens with the surplus. You're right in some respects. Equally, you could say that the £500 that was donated, perhaps the parish council should have got credit for it. You know.
But we have an exclusion from giving to charities. It's one of the things we don't give grants to.
Well, again,
At the moment, that is what we don't do.
No, we don't give to fundraisers. We give to charities. We don't
We don't give to fundraisers.
Yeah.
But
We
I mean,
definitely don't.
another thing that we see is that some of these people have actually given us money back, haven't they? They said, we've not spent it all,
Yeah.
can we give it you back? Which, again, they could have done that, couldn't
Or
they?
they could have put it into their asset and asked for less.
Yes.
Well, I think they're saying that they use the money we give them to buy what they said they were going to
Oh, yeah.
buy.
No question about that.
Yeah.
I think that for me it's one of those of the bit they're asking us to help with is to subsidise them putting on the event. If it goes well, then do they have a free hand in what happens with the surplus?
That's what
So-
I'm questioning.
So I would say we've never placed any expectation on any applicants. So I certainly wouldn't hold it against them. In terms of should we have a policy, then I think it would be sensible. But it's one of those of we'll run into difficulties in perhaps in terms of those who do declare and those who don't. And then we're back to the whole thing of how we would police it and evaluate it.
I think there's a significant difference between the Food and Drink Festival and the Film Festival, the Folk Festival, the Art Festival. In that the Food and Drink Festival has the potential to make money. The others don't. They are a community thing that we support regularly because they enrich the community, they bring visitors into the town, they do all those things, but they're never going to make a profit. Whereas the Food and Drink Festival used to. And could potentially. I think we need to be a bit careful. I mean, I think maybe we should say, look, we could consider saying we'll give you this year, but if you make a profit, we want it back, please.
Sorry, I found that form. I've been desperately trying to find that specific bit of it. Is it actually out of profit, out of surplus that they gave that money to the food bank, or was it a bucket collection?
It says out of surplus.
Yeah, out of surplus.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about the money that we gave them went to.
Yeah, no, not
Well, that's
querying what they did with the money.
No, it's just that they developed the surplus, which they wouldn't have known about at the time until the event's over. They don't know, do they? I just question whether they should then be giving it away, or whether they should actually say, well,
When they're
That's
so
the next
precarious, they should be
I think,
thinking.
do you know, I think that, bear in mind how we approach the other grants, which is if there's an underspend, we would expect it to be returned. it's a similar vein to that. I mean, again, I don't think there's anything wrong with what's happened. We've got no problem, and they've been open enough with it. We wouldn't know about it if they hadn't told us. But yeah.
I guess I was going to agree with you there. I think if they have used the money for what we have agreed in the grant that we're giving them, and if they're making a profit overall, that it's not actually parish council money necessarily that they're donating elsewhere. We're assuming that they actually use that money for what they asked for, then I don't see that there is an issue with this. And they have said that they're a not-for-profit organisation, so therefore if they get a surplus, that would seem to be a good thing if they're giving it to the food bank, especially given that they're a sort of food and drink.
But now they're coming back and asking for more money.
Yeah,
Well, I guess they're asking for money for a specific reason.
They
But
could
they-
use
I guess
that
they use that money
£500
for-
for what they've asked the parish council for again.
We'll just hold it.
I don't see that there's an issue.
Councillor Cole.
Me first, all right. I think it's part of our responsibility in financial risk management to, where it's a biggish organisation like this, as opposed to 6 months trying to organise a lollipop lady, that we take good financial risk management, and that includes how you use your assets, and we give grants to people who've got some money in the bank. They don't have to be penniless for us to give grants, and it seems. I'm not suggesting we don't give them the grant, but I think we need to look at saying to them, look, you need to manage your finances. If you're going to need £3 next year, don't give it away. You know, if you've made a profit that you can put in the bank and use, that's part of your responsibility of running this organisation.
Okay, so just to further muddy the waters, let's think of other situations. So ones where we've actually given grants to, say like the Civic. We don't have a prohibition on the Civic making donations or grants to anybody. We don't say to them until, you know, don't come and ask us for any money.
No, but we have 2 trustees on their board.
Well, that's immaterial, just that they're on the board. That would suggest they should treat them differently when they make a grant request. If you want, we'll use a different example of it. We could just use one of the football clubs. They may be doing some work, there may be an underspend, but we then don't want to say, what have you done with your other money? Did you give some donations the year before? And if so, who to? And do we like who you gave the money to? How do we feel about it? Would we have been prepared to give that money, or won't we be? So there's a danger. I think I feel a little bit that there's a danger that whilst I get concerned, we could end up with some really quite difficult to implement procedures and policies that, how on earth would we police them? So, question for you, Richard.
I have a further question.
Well, we'll come back. So, in terms of the issues that we've got in getting the evaluations, how would you imagine policing something like that?
I don't think it's a question of policing. I mean, I think you collectively need to be looking at every one of these applications in and of themselves as individual applications. You don't, in a sense, you don't need to have an overarching policy. You just need to look at this as a single application. And, you know, I think Councillor Ryder's point is as valid as Councillor Wilson's point in, you know, the judgment call is made by this committee, and where it falls is down to your individual opinions.
Councillor Cullen.
Do we want... Sorry, Councillor Backus had a hand up.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know whether this will move things along a little bit, but we didn't get much information about how the money had been spent. I assume it's all been submitted and checked, but it might be helpful in the section where section 7, which is your project budget plan, where you where they explain what money's been spent on, and we don't have much detail really. I think if they'd been clever, they could have, if they filled that in terms of where it's, in a more detail,
Are you on about where it says
more detail. where it's-
38,000?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
they,
more detail.
yeah, I wonder if
Yeah.
I wonder if they have got. It does say see attached.
It
I'll
just
have to have
says see
a- I'll have to have a look.
attached,
I'll have to have a look in my
Yeah.
in the
So-
folder.
Additionally,
So they could be a bit, could be a bit canny and make it clear there where the money that we are giving or requesting.
I'd like to know more about the company as well.
where it's going.
Well, we have the previous year's grant evaluation
Yeah.
where they
Yes.
they basically say that it did go on what
Yeah.
they said, which was litter and refuse collection and.
I don't
Yes.
think that comes into question, does it?
No, that's not what
No.
I mean, but do we know who their directors are? Or who their governing body? I mean, we ask everybody who applies to put this in. I don't know, and we've some CICs, as you know, we've got doubts about some CICs. I don't know anything about these.
Well, I mean, I think it's been raised before about them that they are business people who will benefit from the festival. A lot of them. I don't know all of them, of course, but that is something that's been said before. It's people who run the Nook, for example, Bottom Trout.
All of which is fine, but do we know who their actual treasurer is and their chair, all that
Yeah,
stuff that we ask everybody else for?
Yeah, because they're a company, so they have the same paperwork as every other community interest company. Which you'll remember that the chairman sees that we don't share with. It's nothing you share with
If
the
it was,
member.
if there's any confusion in terms of the CIC route, effectively that's just an alternative model for a charity to
No,
operate.
we know what CICs are, but in our working group, we agreed that certain CICs would not be supported by us, that if they didn't have a list of trustees and a board of management, if they were just a little company,
No, they've definitely got all of that. That's not the problem.
and aims and objectives that and all of that stuff.
That's not the problem.
But they don't all have that, the CICs.
No, but
No, they do. They definitely do.
Right.
that's all part of our process for accepting the grant request, isn't it?
Yeah, you had all that information when you looked at them.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, I think my point is, I'd just like to go to them and say, well, if we're going to give you another grant for this, don't give it away to somebody else.
However,
If you are proposing making a grant elsewhere, then you should be giving it back to us.
But they would say they've spent that money. This is other money. This is the problem, isn't it?
It's all the same money at the end of the day, isn't it?
Just on that one, I'm sure we should be really encouraging self-sufficiency from this. And obviously, you did mention football clubs and the likes there, but they've got ongoing business, don't they? So they know they've got a regular income stream coming on there. We're talking about Food Festival, which has a limited name. They know next year they're going to require some more money. So I agree with Councillor Wilson. I do think that really they should be looking at banking that money and making sure that next year they're more sustainable without asking for grants, and at some point perhaps building up regular funding so they can actually become a totally self-sustained group of people and do it from that.
Yeah. I appreciate that we are looking at this one, but I'm also thinking about all those other festival events. And whilst you might argue that this is one that's an opportunity to generate a surplus, and the other ones would struggle, then we need to go even more so for the ones that would struggle not to give any money away. If the one that's likely to turn a surplus, if we say we need to hold on to reserves, if we differentiate between festivals that can generate a surplus, or a strong surplus, and a modest surplus, and then what they choose to do with it, equally for those festivals where they're on break even, are we going to be putting a prohibition on those that they will not be making donations to anybody else because they're dependent upon the grant, or do we just restrict the one that's actually doing well?
I can't understand why they would want to make a donation if they're only on break even. Surely they would want to bank that for the next event.
Well,
Because
you'd hope so.
as they've now laid it out in this passage here, they said we had enough money then to give £500, but now we are facing similar problems to last year in generating, and we're currently a lot loss of 3,000. So you
Yeah,
know,
but the ups and downs are predictable, aren't they? One good year doesn't followed by ever more years of good years. So I again,
Well, all the more reason not to give it away.
Yes,
I have to say,
absolutely.
Sorry to be heartless.
well, these are the issues that we have to consider.
yeah,
this
well,
is
no,
proper. This is
I'm-
proper.
so well, to be clear on this, I think it's worthwhile putting a lot of time into this particular one, as long as we then think of that, apply that thinking to other grants, especially when we get to the big raft of grant applications that are coming in. We judge all on the individual merits, but we do need to have some guiding rules, if you like, around what we're going to support and what we're not going to support.
Well, we do. We have the findings of the working group. We have a list of what we will support and what we won't support, which is quite a good set of guidelines.
That's not really the
And was agreed by full council, this group, this subcommittee and full council.
I guess it just concerns me that we're effectively saying that if we give out grants to organisations, that they shouldn't give any donations to anybody else, they should keep that money in reserves to use
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
So that could be any sort of group, couldn't it?
Yeah.
As you say, it could be the Scouts that might decide to give a donation to somebody,
But
or
then it's
you
a
know,
kind of
any of those organisations
They've got a
that
service.
have different aspects to them. And I don't know, I feel like I've gone down a rabbit hole.
Well, I think that
Start-
that's it.
start putting down.
So you made a comment, well, if they've got a surplus,
Donate it.
Put it into the.
but then you
budget.
might have that organisation might come back to say, oh, we've got a big project on, we're redoing the kitchen or the toilets, can we have some money? So it has happened, it does happen. I think fundamentally for me, I'm quite split on this, because I feel a bit like, well, actually, do we just take a step back and do we just say, do we like what they're doing? And if we like what they're doing, do we even need to get volumes of information from? We know what the Food and Drink Festival does, we know what the Film Festival does, we know what they all do. So do we need to jump through hoops before we say we'll support it? The next, I haven't finished that, thanks. The next bit with it is, do we want to get closer to how they operate, how they run? Are we looking to step in? That's not our role at all. So we can't micromanage them and tell them what they should and shouldn't be doing. But then, if you're not doing that, how on earth do you control what they're doing with any surplus or how they're running their affairs? So to me, it's one of those of I'm torn on this issue, but I do feel, and I think that the bit for me really is our role is we've got the funding to help our community groups. Perhaps it's a case of just taking a step back. So rather than getting more involved, more detail, more control over them. And actually, we're really limited in that because we're totally dependent upon them disclosing things to us anyway for us to know, unless we're going to spend a fortune policing it, which will probably be way more than what any of these issues would amount to. Do we take a step back and do we just simply say, we like what you've been doing? And actually, rather than us take an awful lot of time deciding whether we're going to support you each year, make that commitment to support them. Do we like the Food and Drink Festival? Yes, we'll commit to it. And I think that's the bit that I think that two fundamental approaches will help us. Pam?
I'd like to reiterate the difference between the Food and Drink Festival and the other festivals. That this is at heart a commercial business that could become self-sufficient, possibly. Now, I don't want it to fail, and if they're struggling, I want us to support them, but it's not a community asset in the way the others are. It's a commercial event.
When you say the others, could you give us examples? Because
Film festival, folk festival,
okay, so I would say
art festival.
nearly everything the Honley Business Association does straddles both, and it does a lot of community activity, but it does a lot for its members as well.
Yeah, but they don't come to us asking for money for things other than very specific things that they spend that money on, which are not about making money, but about a thing for the community. The Food and Drink Festival is about making money.
Well, I would say the Christmas
about-
light switch on is about
it's
making
about
an
four,
awful lot of
yeah.
money.
The parish council cannot, we do not have a legal power to promote businesses. How we are doing this is we have a legal power to promote tourism.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
It's the event we're supporting, I suppose, rather than where every pound note finishes up. And that's the bit. Do we like the event because of the benefit it has for the wider community? And there's always going to be, just think about it for just a football club ground. There's more people who are not going to get a benefit from that than there are who are, but we don't say no to that. There's 1,000 people involved in Honley Junior Football Club, but there's 25,000 who live in the valley. So when it comes to who enjoys the food and drink festival, is the focus upon the thousands of people out there who are enjoying it, or the dozen or so people who are making some money from it? We don't challenge the builder for a toilet blocker. Are you doing it for break even because it's a community event and the parish is funding it? So there is a danger of trying to draw a distinction between what's, if you like, 100% community and what's 100% commercial, because to me they're all a blend. And wherever that dividing line is, I have no idea. And I don't think you get to it unless we were micromanaging them, and that's not our world.
Could I just step back so I can explain what I'm trying to say really well? I'm not against this grant, far from it. That's fine. We should support it, and I'm quite happy to do that. My only question is, if they again make a surplus and they again give it away, then for heaven's sake, don't come back next year asking for.
Do we need to just say something to them with a proviso?
I mean, yeah, suggest that they use their surpluses to ensure sustainability for future years, and that we will always be open if they're struggling, but they should.
Because what they're doing is, when you've got a surplus, you kind of use that for when you're going through bad times, don't you? But that doesn't seem to necessarily be happening here. And
well, I do think that the food bank is linked to a food and drink festival. It's a little bit like paying artists at a big arts festival, but the two things combined. You're wanting to, the food and drink festival creates an excess of food, and the fact that they've considered this in the mix, it's not like they're donating it to something that's nothing whatsoever to do with them. So
I'm not casting judgment on
how it's been spent, but I think it links with the organisation, what the organisation is about. So, it's not that they've given it to, I don't know, anything.
But they could have.
They could have, but they didn't.
No.
They gave it to something that's linked to what they're doing. And I do think making a profit isn't necessarily a terrible thing. What's good for business in the whole valley is good for the whole valley, isn't it? Overall. So
Nobody in this room has suggested that profit is a bad thing.
yeah, so it's just, and I do agree with you that I think micromanaging it is just outside the remit of it. Whether we think it's a good festival that we want to support.
does anybody want to propose anything?
Well, I'm still going to stick with this discussion.
We're away of
Nobody should be
proposing.
supporting it. There's a lot of structureness and,
Let me just be devil's advocate here then. So, they gave the donation to the Home First Food Bank. Would we feel any different? Would we have a different view if they'd given it to something that was outside the area, or perhaps something that we didn't think was worthy?
well, I don't think so.
No, that isn't irrelevant.
Would it make us look at this differently? Is it for us? The fundamental question is it for us to just make the grant for the event and accept that they've done what they've said they're going to do, which is the event, or is it for us to actually look at all aspects of what they do? In which case, where they make the donation, but I just feel that it's too I take your point entirely, Andy, and it is one of those where I just think, like, it does seem strange. You've given away some money, and then the year after, surprise, you're struggling. Maybe not the most sensible thing to do. But I think Honley Show's been there before, where they've given donations and then actually having a couple of bad years on the trot, and then COVID almost brought them to their knees. I bet they looked back and wished they'd not been quite so generous in previous years, but things were rosy then.
Yeah, but this was only 1 year ago.
Indeed.
I mean, it is our responsibility to be careful about our financial risk management, and we do look at every grant application's finances and whether they are well run. We do. Part of what we do, and I think, I'm not, like Andy, I'm not suggesting we don't give them this grant, but I am suggesting that we say to them, we need to see you perhaps putting more away to keep yourself sustainable against future festivals.
Okay. Isaac, we haven't heard from you on this. Have you got any comments?
Me?
Yeah, if you've got any.
Well, having experience of grant processing and whatever the current job, I do support it, but if everybody else have doubts about it, you could, how can I say this, like a clause, should we say, like it has to be specifically for the festival, for the festival, if you know what I'm saying. Then going elsewhere. So if they want to spend it elsewhere, they've got to come back to us and say we want to use the money elsewhere than what it says on the application.
Well, that's difficult because they won't come back and say you gave us £1,500, we spent it on.
Yeah, they spent it. They did spend it.
Well, this gets to the nub of the issue of if we get into the detail, how do you police and regulate it unless they disclose it, and then you're punishing the ones who are open and then the ones who aren't get away with it.
It's not just simply, I mean, I'm for obviously giving them the grant anyway, that's not really the question. We're going down this really. Would it not be possible to say to them that obviously we're giving good consideration to them, obviously they're going to get the grant, but we're mindful of what's happened the previous year. They have money to carry forward, they've not carried that money forward and they've donated, yet they're at our door again. So basically handing the problem to them, handing our concerns to them and saying that they're considered next year when it comes round again if you do the same thing again. And that way we're not micromanaging, it just gives them a reason to demonstrate that they are acting appropriately with the money.
How would we even know that though? I mean, it says here, however, in 2022, as well as building some much needed reserves, we were able to give a donation of £500 to the Home Birth Food Bank from last year's surplus. So presumably next year they just leave out that, they could just leave out that sentence and then we've been on the rise.
Yeah, but that doesn't. There's no principle.
I was going to move that we agree to pay this grant. I agree completely with what Jane was just saying. And that we empowered our clerk to have a small dialogue with them, pointing out that amongst our rules is that we don't pay organisations to then hand money on elsewhere. And if they're sensible, they will leave that line out.
So, thank you for that proposal. I'm happy to second that. We're going to move to a vote on this, but then I want to come back to the rolling grant discussion, which might lead us somewhere differently. So, all in favour of Councillor Blacker's proposal, please indicate now. Okay. All those against? Abstainers? So that's carried. Now, is this one where we're prepared to make a multi-year offer? We know exactly what it is, we know what they do and how they go about doing it. We're going to flag up the concerns about what they do with the surplus. Do we want to go back and tell them that we're happy to make effectively a review for 4 years, wouldn't it? So
Well, not longer than the council.
yeah. So we could give that 4-year period, which avoids us touching it repeatedly. It also avoids them having to create a whole load of paperwork. Councillor Brooke.
Just find it a bit difficult, it's going to be pointed out that obviously this is one of the festivals which has the ability to perhaps make its own revenue and it may well cover its own costs, so I don't know if we could actually enter into that one knowing that they have the ability to become self-sufficient. Then we could be giving them money which they don't necessarily need at the time. With the others, I can almost guarantee, because as Councillor Collins said there, a lot of them we can guarantee they don't make money, so I think we could enter into that one quite readily, knowing that they are not for profit. But this one I think we find it a bit difficult from my perspective. I think we have to be really careful when it came to a profit making, or the profit's not bad word of grief, profit making enterprise like this one now.
Councillor Byrne.
I'm really sorry to say that, as you know, I'm so much in favour of the principle of rolling grants for all the reasons that we know about, and this might have been a candidate for that. But given all the conversation we just had, I really don't feel I can support that at this moment.
Okay. I wanted to have the decision on it, but to be honest, after the discussion we've had before, it is one of those. But perhaps we want to see.
If they come back next year with a 30,000 surplus, we'll know you've made the right decision.
Well, I think also Councillor Brooks' comment is quite a sensible one when we're looking at the rolling grants, which is perhaps it is one of those where it's whether or not they're going to be on a roller coaster, or whether it's always going to be, you know, whether the focus is break even or whether it's surplus. So thank you for your contributions. I'm happy to let that drop without a proposal either way. If members are, we don't need to take a vote on it. There's no proposal made, so we'll just let that drop. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No?
Exactly how it should be.
So let me just comment on this. This is almost a test run for that next meeting. I would rather we have that conversation now and get some things clear in his mind, because when we start going through 15 applications, if we have that depth of discussion on each one, we will be having extra special meetings. So at least if we can start to get our heads around how we feel about things, hopefully when those other grant requests come through, we can move through them quickly.
You're being very optimistic if you think there's only going to be 15.
Can I propose that, and I requested this at the last meeting, that the final report of the working group, which was approved by this committee and by full council, is circulated to all members of this committee.
Yes. Can you see that?
Yeah, I thought somebody else was tasked with that. Right, okay.
Okay, so part 4. To consider a grant application from Sharing Memories, application enclosed. This is £1,500 towards room hire and taxes. So, this is a long-standing venture. Its focus is not just on older people, but older people, if you like, with quite substantial issues in terms of getting out and about.
Can I make a point about, so one of the things with this group before is we refused the grants, or we refused to even review applications from them in the past, because we were concerned, as Pat said before, about whether they were more like a sole trader, trying to create work and income for the people running the organisation. However, since then, they've got a management board now. They've got, you know, it's all been done properly, which a couple of years ago wasn't. And they've got a friends group. They've got committee members. They've got chair. They've got so that side of things has gone, which is a very positive thing.
Okay. So, do we have anybody wishing to make a comment, or is it quick?
I suppose my only concern is that some of the activities that the Regional Trust is doing, which is in Heritage Village, which is outside the area, and we think that's material on that, I suppose, as a point.
Yeah, it's a point, but the mental health services in Longley, isn't it? Is that right?
No, it was, but they stopped it. So the issue with some things is going to be where they're at, you know, where can you access them. So I don't think that in particular should be a bar on it. Again, it's that bit about micromanaging. If there was an option in the valley, then maybe you'd want to see that, but they may have explored it. But I think the issue with the Bridgewood Trust, that's where they are. So, and Armitage Bridge is just a stride outside of the parish boundary.
I mean, I think in the past we've talked, when we discussed about whether it should be 100% in the valley, you know, if 5 of 47 scamps don't live in the valley, you know, we would still give the money.
Enfield down is the residential mental health facility at the bottom of Station Road in Honley. So
Yeah.
some of
It's
the
happening, it's being delivered in the building.
okay.
I mean, there's a point where they say they meet every Thursday in Holford, Wednesday and Thursday.
Mm.
So it's not as if it's.
Yeah, the base of the tech, the base of the tech, not Bridgewood Trust.
So there's two bits, if you like. There's three actually, I suppose. There's the older people who receive the support who are mainly based in Old Valley. There's the volunteers who help with their work who are mainly based in Old Valley, and then there's people who actually maybe get to enjoy and benefit from what they're doing. And if they're doing a performance in Armitage Bridge, well, then there may well be people from outside the area, but you'll have that with all your food and drinks and events and whatnot.
Well, it's saying 12 weeks room hire at the time.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a good portion of it, isn't it?
I propose we support it.
Remember, you don't have to give them everything. You don't have to give them everything they've asked for. If we gave everything at £1,500, we haven't got a lot of money to give around.
Well, we were in a grand last year, but we were just
It's gone up this year. But our pot hasn't gone up.
No, but what we probably will discover is, well, as with the previous one, everybody who previously was saying they needed £1,000 will now be saying they need £1,500.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyhow, so we've got a proposer.
Second.
Okay, Councillor, do you want to make a comment?
Well, I was just very aware that you'd said we should consider all of them together, and I know why this has been brought forward because it starts sooner. But I mean, you perhaps know, Richard, how many grants are in the pipeline? Are we going to be short of money further along the line?
It's very hard to tell because they all come in a glut on the last day. On the 31st of August, we'll get about 30. Yeah.
So-
At the moment, we've got about 10.
What can happen is that there's hardly any in, and then Richard will do a shout out on Facebook, and then that might generate lots.
Yeah.
In previous years, there was always a concern about, if we give the grants, when we get to end of the year, there won't be any money left. And for my first 8 years, I heard that every single meeting, and for each of those 8 years, we never got close to the budget. It never, ever, ever happened. And it was trotted out every time, and as being a reason not to award anything at all. And we all said, well, if you were concerned, then maybe we could look to scale it back, or depends where the project is, tell them to come back at the end of the year, and we can, so, whereas in the last couple of years, we've got up to the budget, have we not? But that's because we've been a lot more proactive in encouraging people to come in. We've got a much a wider remit in terms of grants, and actually you could say we're giving away more money in grants than we ever have done. So it's one of those I guess it's always to be had in mind. The bigger issue is not with this round though; it's with the second round. And that's again part of the problem with having two big rounds, because if that September round takes 2/3 of the pot, that really limits what you can do. But then again,
as you said, it's never been an issue before. Every year, people say, well, we should say we'll only spend half, and you say, well, how do you know?
but if
You can't.
we had 4 rounds, we'd still have that problem on the
Yeah.
4th round,
Yeah.
which would be, do we hold back on rounds 1, 2 and 3, and then what happens if 4's a bit flat? Okay, so we've got a proposer.
So before you go, can I just clarify? Can some of these applicants come back a second time? So could they put in another application in the later round, in the second round?
Yeah.
For the same project or for a different project?
Well, okay, let's ask for both, for either.
Well, definitely for a different project. And if they're coming back for an extra one, they're going to have to justify why more money. So if that reason was because we told them they could have this now, but if we've got a surplus come back later, then obviously that would be valid, wouldn't it? But if they come back for a double dip, well, we would take it on. If they were coming back saying we need more money, I guess we'd have to consider on its merits.
Yeah, they could come with you know, tons of applications. It's your responsibility to weigh them up in that context.
We
So
don't
you've
have a
already-
rule that
you've already
if
had
you've
it.
had a grant, you can't have another one.
I guess, Laura,
You know where I'm going with this.
if it were me, anybody coming back for a double dip on the same project, I would put to the back of the considerations for that second
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
So it would be, if there's anything left over, I'm happy to look at you, but I want to make sure that other people get a fair crack at it first. You've already been in and got something, you probably want to make sure that other events and organisations are also seeing some of the funding. But it depends on what that reason is. So if we chose to reduce it, then I think that's a different matter. Whereas somebody coming back and saying, please can I have some more? It depends, doesn't it? But I think you've got to be mindful of there's a lot of community groups in this family. And
No, I'm just thinking about, eking this out and picking up on this point about whether we manage this amount at this time. Notwithstanding all that you said about, it has always, there's always been enough. And that really was.
I think that's the other bit though, that's one of the things why I'm in favour of the rolling grants, because actually when it comes to the budgeting bit, we can be a lot clearer about what we are doing. And long term, we can work that out, and then we know what money is available for and we can enter into more partnerships in terms of perhaps how they operate things as well. There's that potential further down the line. That's probably more relevant for service provision than it is for finance and management. But and some of the activities that service provision looking after, we could help to shape them. Whereas finance and management, you're getting into the world of micromanaging the actual event or itself. Okay, so we've got a proposal, we've got a seconder. All those in favour of making the full award of £1,500, please show now. Okay, all in favour, all against, and those abstaining. Thank you.
Are we considering this for a rolling grant? What do you call it, a multi-year grant?
This is a single project though, isn't it? So,
Yeah, so I think
But I think sharing memories do a different project, but with the same aims and objectives every year, don't they?
well, they may or may not.
Because it's different, they'd have to put in a different application. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I think
this is just a one-off, okay.
Yeah, I think that the issue with it would be is do we know what it's going to be? So with some of the festivals and events, we're absolutely certain what they are because we've seen them for a dozen years.
Christmas lights aren't difficult to anticipate.
but so that shared memories, like any of those projects, I guess it depends upon exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to part 5 now, which kind of is a little bit that. So the next grant cycle is in September. The closing date's coming up. If you are aware of any organisations that are wanting funding, tell them to get their applications in post haste.
Is that a strict closing date?
Yeah, it is. Because there's a
Does that seem for a friend?
yeah, it is, and that's the issue. That's the issue with the two rounds, which is if it comes in after that closing date, you've got 6 months to wait. But it is for a really important reason, which is the deputy clerk needs the time to make sure that the paperwork's in order, everything is as it should be, that everything's been submitted, and that there's time to raise any queries in terms of what's been submitted, so we can make a determination on it.
And as you can see from what we've just done, when things crop up, we look at them. People have got deadlines that they overlook.
Councillor Walker.
I think having two deadlines a year is a good thing, and we've really only just put it into practice fully, I think, and I think it needs some time to run through, and I think as time goes on, organisations should become aware of the fact that there are 2 deadlines in the year. I mean, there will be emergencies occasionally, like when the beacon blew over onto us. I mean, you can't kind of count for that. There'll be odd things like that, acts of God or whatever. But I think in general, I think we need to stick to this as far as we can, and let organisations know that there are two deadlines, so that they can then think ahead. Organisations can think and budget.
So on that point, both of these applications that we're hearing tonight, they were both well, the Food and Drink Festival was predictable last year,
Mm.
so they could have got in. And the shared memories, they too, well,
They did apply last year, but why did we knock it back last year?
It was, no, it was after, the application was after the
Right.
So
6th January.
there is the tricky bit for some of them about, so for one-off things, for specific projects, that timing can be an issue. And I guess you'd say that the shared memories is one, because we don't offer retrospective grants. So if the money's already been spent, we won't refund it. It's a bit different if a project might start, and we might agree to fund something that's not been spent yet, which is after a project started, but we won't do the retrospective, so we won't do a refund grant. And that's the bit that if having the 2 rounds, that can cause the difficulty for a specific project if that time is not particularly convenient. Okay. So, does anybody else want to make any comments about that next round coming up? Okay, we'll move on to part 6. So, we've got lots and lots and lots of grant evaluation forms. Yes, that's it.
Before I go, can I recommend that the valuation form is in the valuation form can it be in a different colour?
So it's easily recognisable from a grant form and evaluation.
blue. So I don't know, maybe a green colour, I don't know, but whatever colour people want. Yeah.
Are you leaving us now?
Yeah.
Okay, have a nice evening. Can you note some further?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks for that.
D. D.
Oh, no, yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's Holly Silverband, yeah.
Let's hold it started up again.
Yeah, sorry. Some of these, I wasn't expecting you really to go through all of these individually.
Oh, I was. That was the test. Well done, Andy. You're advanced. I'm very disappointed with the rest of you.
But just whether there was anything can be drawn out about what the information was shared, or I mean, Jen was saying it's nice seeing the ones that have photographs showing where the money's gone. Those are always good to see.
I think the bit for me with the evaluations is how much effort goes into them. So, just to give you an idea about some of my background, I used to work for Citizens Advice, and we used to do some projects whereby it felt like half the energy went into applying for the grant, meeting with the funders, setting up a reporting mechanism, feeding back to them, evaluating to them, and then the other half actually went on what the whole supposed purpose of it was. So I'm always a bit wary. Are we asking them to produce? We've got a lot of pages that we've asked our grant recipients to fill in and send back to us. Is it really worth it? Do we need it?
It depends what we do with all this. I mean, I think this is excellent publicity for the parish council, but if anybody sees it other than us.
So we have the publications committee, and they're quite good in terms of making sure people know what grants we've given. But if we do it as on an evaluation basis, well, it could have been 4 or 5 months ago. So it's not particularly timely. Some of them, it might be better as part of, well, we do it as part of the grant to publicise it and awards being made.
But the fundamental reason why we're doing this is our internal auditor said that we don't have enough ways of proving how we're spending public money. It's solely about that. It's not about publicity or anything like that. This is about making sure that we are spending the money, or we are giving the money and it's being used in a way that's...
So the minimum we need is whatever the original application was that we gave the grant for.
Yeah, but they're the same thing. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But it's whether or not, do you get receipts sent in?
Sometimes this is a point I was saying to Jen. Is that a good thing where they all send receipts in? Because some do and some don't.
But when we're talking 30 odd grants a year, how much? It is that bit of how much work we're going to pay.
I've written an awful lot of grant applications over the years to a number of funding bodies, and I've always been required to do an evaluation. And really, I think this is a pretty straightforward and simple evaluation, and it doesn't take long to do. I think that's one bit that needs adjusting, which is about the spend. It's the spend. Where I think people were confused about. I think they were meant to decrement the amount of the grant.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah. So I think that
yeah.
needs adjusting. But apart from that, I just think it's quite. I think it's quite reasonable to expect people to do this. And I just think it's hugely powerful, particularly those with the photographs. It's just, you know, this is one of the best things I think we do as a parish council.
Well, what we're going to do with those photographs, and how we're going to use them in publicity.
We
Because
should. Put them on the website.
just on our website. Okay. Councillor Bell.
I think it's also useful perhaps for the organisations themselves to focus and reflect on, you know, what was the outcome, what was the output, if you like, of you know, of this funding, of this project and so on. So for that reason I think it's useful.
Councillors?
Would we use these if they then apply for a grant the next year? So if we go back and say, well, what did you do with the last one? Where's your evidence for how you spent it?
So,
So it's useful.
Well, again, something me and Jen was saying about whether you kind of say that if you don't submit the evaluation that you're not going to get the grant the following year.
so back to your list. We've got all these in, but we've got as many not in. Is that?
That's right, exactly. Exactly.
So you're back to the bit of some people have gone to some effort and other people haven't. So what's the sanction? What's the consequences of that?
Not necessarily more.
Well, I think maybe we should.
Well, the ones like the film festival and the arts festival, they are all bang, bang, bang. The evaluations come back. They're all the photographs and programs and whatever, because they're aware how the process works.
So which ones haven't replied then?
Well, a lot. I mean, admittedly, I did those later than the others, but only one of the youth ones got back. You know that you gave a lot of money to youth clubs, Cafe 100, Enable Youth. We did get one from, but who else was it, Jen? Do you remember the motocross group?
Honley Youth.
That's enabling youth, isn't it?
Honley Village Community Trust are not very good at it. Honley Business Association, great. Honley Village, not good. So it's hard to say. But
You've got Friends of Nab School. I actually thought they had got something back to it. Oh no, perhaps it was an earlier one that they've got an evaluation in full. So Friends of Nab School. Just looking for the youth ones. Children's Art School.
yeah. Some of them, to be fair, are not. I have had an email from them saying they're off until September or something like that. So there's a few who've sent me reasons for why they haven't filled them in. Fair enough.
Hunferth Town Juniors Football Club.
Yeah. They're the ones with the coach who pay for their coaches. Yeah.
Okay, Jen, thanks. Councillor Cotton.
Do we follow them up? And if so, I mean, I'm volunteering you for more work, but I mean,
No,
if they don't submit it, we should
I am
chase them at least once.
I am keeping chasing them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if I may, Councillor Button, I think we need to be a bit more robust than that. I think it's a case of we need to chase them, but you do need to, perhaps we need to say, until it's submitted, you can submit another grant request.
Yeah.
I think that if the carry on, I don't make this
Yeah. Because
Councillor Bill, sorry.
I think I was going to say very much the same thing. You know, I'm not sure whether it's a sanction or not, but I certainly do think it should influence how we view the next, you know, a future application for them.
Okay. Councillor.
Would it be possible, I'd have to speak to whichever people had submitted the previous grant, to find the best example version of that one there by email and perhaps share that with other people, if they're not sure what
So they know what to submit.
Yeah, just if we said this is a good example on there, we could obviously redact anything personal.
Yeah.
That's a good example. Perhaps if you could follow that suit there, then maybe obviously you will achieve grant status and you get money from them. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. We don't want to be punitive with it. We want the information.
We want to help people to do it right.
Councillor.
I'd be hard line on this really. I think if they don't submit, if they don't submit an evaluation after being chased up, And maybe there might, I mean, there are different kinds of organisations, some of which are securely based in one of our parish council wards, some are not. So if there's one in your ward that you know hasn't responded, you could just have a quiet word, couldn't you? You could try and encourage them to respond.
Because it's probably hard to realise how much work there is chasing these people.
Yes.
It took me a lot of time, didn't it? Like days and days and days. Just, you know,
But I do
it's
think,
quite dispiriting.
yeah, I just think with that carrot and stick of, if we send out an example of what it is they need to submit, but then make it clear that they ain't going to get another grant until it's returned, I think that will get us there.
Is that made clear in the application process? Do we say,
That was my
this
question.
process is, you know, you apply, we look at it, we give you or we don't, we give you part or we don't. You are required, not expected, but required to fulfil it, and if you don't, it's unlikely
No,
you would
that's
be considered for a
No,
full.
that's not. No, we're only really deciding that now, aren't we?
Right. Well, I think maybe it should be written on the application form.
I'd
But
be
just
amazed
like
if
you
it isn't.
said, on the application, do we make it clear that a follow-up form will be required?
I would have to have a look. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Have a look and see.
And perhaps we should,
see-
I mean,
see-
We should, yeah.
I think it does somewhere say that in the application rules, but it might be worth making, sorry,
That's right.
might be worth making mention, even with the ones that we've already decided on tonight, at the time that the money's going out. You
No, we do that.
At least we clear it.
Yes, I was just going to say, Rich habitually copies me in on the emails he sends, telling people that they've been successful in their grant application. So in those emails, always say, you know, you need to make sure you've got an evaluation back to us, and here's the form, or the form will be sent back later, and you need to make sure that you fill it in.
Yeah, I would suggest the issue is like everything, which is nobody reads the terms and conditions when they get what they want. That comes afterwards, I think. but again, Rich, I guess it's a case of just having some control
I
mechanisms to
agree
chase
to
them.
provide a report including photographs to the council indicating how the grant award has been spent within 2 months
Ah,
of
right.
completion. That's on the application form.
Right, good.
Yeah, so the bit for you to do when you send them perhaps is also to have some kind of follow-up mechanism. So if you know when they're going to when the project will have been completed, is to encourage them to do it there and at that point, isn't it, rather than to have to chase them all up en masse. Right. Okay, so
I just wanted to pick on Councillor Brooks' point that I think sending them examples of a good one is a good idea, and we might do that quite early with, and particularly little groups who've never applied before, in particular, who might be concerned about how you evaluate a street party. You know,
I want to put a proposal forward, and hopefully it'll be a nice summary where we're at with this discussion. So we are going to require an evaluation form to be completed from every successful grant recipient. Until that is submitted, we will consider them for further grants. The Deputy Clerk will set up a process to monitor the return of the evaluation forms, and will proactively offer them a pro forma, completed pro forma, and that we will chase it up again. You've done this on a reporting basis, haven't you? So you could say, I'll leave it at that. So the clerk will set up a process for monitoring the return of the evaluation forms. So that's a proposal I'd like to make. Can I have somebody who'll second that? Councillor Brooke for seconding. All those in favour of introducing that process? All in favour? Thank you. Thank you. So, is there any comments on any of the other grants? Did anybody else find the other one where the wrong word had been used? Okay, we'll move on to part 7 then. So, to consider a request from Friends of Cliff Wreck to be able to use the £184.28 underspend.
Right, this has changed since this agenda went out. So, shall I share this?
Yeah, what do they want to use it on?
Well, at the time they wanted to use it on this Carols on the Cliff thing, so they had £184.28 as an underspend from last year's project. What was last year's project, Councillor Blacker?
I can't speak.
You can share facts.
You mean for the coronation?
Coronation, right,
It
yes.
was I think it was in 951.
So money was left over, and they were going to put it to the Carols on the Cliff thing, and they were expecting not to submit a grant application. However, they have now submitted an application form anyway to be considered in September, and they want us at that point to consider whether they can basically use that £184.28, which would mean that we would have to give them £184.28 less than that's what
How much less in September, do you know?
I'm not sure.
So we let it off.
So what we're saying is so
we can leave this one.
deferred, yeah, this is deferred.
Okay, we'll leave
to
it.
next month.
Okay. Well, okay with that, not to consider it. Okay. So, part 8, to consider a request from Honley, 6 Home Valley Scouts, to be able to use their £973 underspend to purchase gas urns to heat the large supply. I've told them this.
Can I make a point with this one, that I asked them to submit a grant evaluation form on the basis that they're asking for this, but they haven't, so,
Right.
so I think that's important to
Okay.
know.
So, to be brutally honest, my view is for all the underspends, where they've got the honesty and openness to declare the underspends and then give a meaningful use for how they want to use it, I wouldn't call it automatic, but I'd be pretty much willing to grant it every single time, I think. So, I'd be comfortable with this. The issue we're straight back into is the fact that they haven't done the evaluation form, so I would probably say yes, subject to submission of the evaluation
I
form.
think that's fair enough.
Councillor Kelly.
It's a very big underspend. You know, 100 quid here and 120 there is normal. How much? I don't remember how much we gave them in total.
They did. I mean, it was an email I got from them, so it wasn't especially detailed. But I think they found a way of. Are they the ones? Trying to think what we got from them.
I can't remember the original application.
Are they the bollards?
Yeah, it was the bollards ones.
Bollards and tables. Bollards and tables.
So it says here.
I think they got cheaper tables than they were anticipating. That's why they ended up with the.
But I mean, did they apply for 1,500 and they only spent 500 of it?
Well, it was a 5,000. It was.
Oh, it was
it was
5,000, right.
No, I can't remember the amount, but it was a
It was a
community
big,
asset.
it was a
rather
big
than
one, right.
rather
Okay,
than a project.
that was all I wanted to know.
Does it now do it?
No, that's the point. They haven't.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
on this.
Yeah.
We've got loads of hands up.
Councillor Wilson.
If only you
Oh,
could read this.
James,
Just going to say that in their email they did say we managed to source tables that were as good as but cheaper than the ones that we had provided the original quotations for, and that's why they were left with a surplus of 973.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I think I'm just slightly uncomfortable with the amount, not the principle. £973 is quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
You always find something
Yes,
to spend it on.
But it does depend upon the extent of the grant. So this will be a property one, so it won't be 973 off of 1,500.
No, it's 5,000 again.
Yeah. So
It's still a fifth of the total,
Should,
wasn't
you
it?
know, should it?
Was the
It's
should
a
we
fifth of what
consider
we
it?
gave.
I was going to say, was the 5,000 all that they were proposing to spend? Was their budget actually higher? Was it they were just requesting 5,000
I can't remember the
towards
application.
the item?
I can't remember the application, to be truthful.
I could look it up.
I think as Councillor Collins says, you know, it's one thing if it's a couple £100, but when you're going above that, you think, should this be a separate application as to leave it?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
do we have any other comments?
Just that I agree, it seems a lot of money. The surplus that maybe a new application.
Well, it's something good of them to sort of hold up.
Yeah.
From what you said about the description of what it was, what they're proposing to spend it on is perfectly fine, but it's not similar to what we gave it for.
Yep.
And we might well say, yes, have the 973 for gas boilers when they ask, but I don't.
Let's ask them to apply again for
I
that,
think
for
so.
that money.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't cost us anything.
Yeah.
Keep the money we've already given you.
But here's the bit, I'm going to let them come through on the September round. So,
Does it matter?
Well, they've got time to get
well,
it in.
yeah, otherwise it's going to be, whenever it is, April.
But they've got the
Well,
money.
they're not going to go camping in November much, are they? Probably not going to need these earnings till April.
They're actually going camping next week, but
Well, they're not going to get it by next week, whatever they do.
They've actually got the money though, haven't they?
yeah, no, but it would be wrong of them to spend
Yeah.
that money, having said we sat on some.
Yeah.
I get what, yeah, and they've not submitted the evaluation, so.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say,
They do say they will though, they do say, you know, in the next couple
Well,
of weeks, we've got
okay.
some pictures, we're taking pictures of the through to you, so they're planning.
But that was it was a while ago. I asked them.
It's chair's discretion as to whether or not I'll allow somebody in late. So as we seem to be breaking all the rules on the rounds, if they get the application in so that there's time for you to assess it properly and it can go onto the September agenda, I'm happy to have it as a late item. But it needs to come with an evaluation.
yeah, they
As
can't
well.
send it the
So
morning.
it
of
needs
the
an
meeting.
evaluation and a grant one. So we need to feed this back to them quickly. So I'm comfortable with that. So the proposal from Councillor Wilson, I think we're on, is that we will not approve the underspend, but we're inviting them to make a grant application for it. So we've got a proposal there. Councillor Bailey, are you happy to second that?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favour, if you please indicate. That's unanimous. Okay. So, part 9, to consider any further actions regarding the grant evaluation form. So, part A of that is information shared. So, Wooldale Wanderers, so they've declared 123.74, haven't they? But they've not suggested an alternative purpose for it.
No.
Okay. So, they've not returned it either.
No, it's still going.
Okay. So how do we want to deal with those then? Do we want to invite them? Do we just say send us the underspend back, or do we proactively invite them to identify something purposeful to spend it on?
Oh, that's for that.
Okay. So Councillor Collins made that proposal. Do we have somebody to second it? Councillor Bailey to second it. All in favour? Unanimous. Part B, so this is the bit where Councillor Bennett had made the comment, the format of the forms or the process. So for the forms itself, I think it makes sense to have them clearly distinguishable from the grant request forms. So I'm happy enough to leave that with the clerk if everybody else is.
Can I just add, I don't think this is, I'm not sure if this fits in here, it's not so much about the format of the form. I've just looking at the process, if you like, and the criteria. For those of you who sat on the working party and so on, please don't worry. I'm not suggesting for a moment that that's throwing out in there. I read it. I thought it was a really, an amazing, rigorous piece of work. The only thing that I would like perhaps to see in it is some element of how inclusive their organisation is being or the project is being, because it talks about the numbers that it's reaching, but it doesn't talk about efforts that are being made to be inclusive towards a wide, as wide as possible the community. So it's a broad principle making. I'm not getting out of detail here. I'm just making a broad principle.
So we've got a proposal from Councillor Bailey. Do we have a second? All in favour? Do you want to indicate? Okay, unanimous. Do we have any other comments on the forms or process?
Just the one I made before about the recording of families.
yeah, okay.
That column waste, I think it's supposed to decrement with. When I notice people in the press, they put people in all sorts of things and often just let it blank.
Okay.
Again, I think we've already captured it, but it's that bit about using the whole process just to follow up after completion. Okay. So, part 10. To consider a request from Home Firth Forward for the Parish Council to take responsibility and financial control for the business map of Home Firth. This has been produced by Home Firth Forward for the last few years, but they've asked if the Parish Council will consider taking full responsibility for it. Alternatively, they'd like to apply for a grant. Well, I'll start off with this one, which is, I find it interesting that an organisation thinks it's a good idea to do something and then turns around and saying, I'll hand it over to you to deliver my brilliant idea. So, on this particular thing, my view is no. On a general principle, my view is no. I think it's a case of we're more than capable of deciding as a council what we actively want to pursue. This is a community idea that we've supported. We've done similarly in Holmley. I wouldn't entertain taking it on. It wouldn't really be for finance and management. If finance and management were minded, it wouldn't really be for us to do that, because it's work that wouldn't fall on this particular committee. It would fall on probably publications or service provision. Do we have any other views or comments on this? Councillor Bailey.
Can I just say that with another hat on, I know that there's other things that are done by Tourist Information, therefore by Kirklees, in terms of producing maps of the area and so on. These things all need to hang together. And it's fine, you know, if there's a range of things there, that's great, and if that's what Home Firth Forward want to do, that's great. But if it was being passed over from them, I think that needs to be taken into account. Where else could this be better produced, and in conjunction with what other publications?
Councillor Blacker.
I was just going to agree completely with your remarks.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Matt, Charles, but there's also the Business Association from Firth as well. And if this is a business map, perhaps we could level their inquiry more towards them and ask them if they'd like to contribute or take over the ring of it, because that would appear to be what it's about, business.
Yeah.
So I would welcome it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so on this particular item, I'll make a proposal, which is that to kindly decline the opportunity to take on the responsibility for it, to suggest that they have that conversation with the newly reformed, is it Home Valley Business Association? Is that what it's called? Well, with the business association that covers
different forms, don't there?
Well,
it's a bit confusing.
Well, I think some of it's old information. But yeah. So with the business, so to suggest that they take up that conversation with the business associations covering Home Firth, and to invite them to make a grant application for September round. So that's my proposal. Do I have a seconder? Seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Right, so we'll move on to item 43, which is accounts for payment. So to note, the chairman's expenses is £1,000. That's not mine. That's the chair of the council. Nothing has been spent yet.
You fine with it?
Well, she's not planning to spend it yet. So there's a new policy to go in front of council in October. Part 2, to consider approval of the draft month-to-month dates schedule of payments for August 23, which is item K on the appendices.
Right, so it's just the yellow ones you're approving. The red ones are ones where it will go into deficit, so really council has to approve the fabrication of home moss topograph. I shouldn't really pay the poppy wreaths either in terms of it going over budget, but it's only like £10 over, so I'm just going to pay it regardless. So I'm telling you that.
These are for the Remembrance Sunday, aren't
Yeah.
they? Yeah. Okay. Well, so
So it's just the yellow ones, poo bags, leafleting.
we're just considering that.
No, you need to approve it.
Okay. So I'm happy to move that. Do we have somebody to second it? Councillor Blacker. All those in favour? Unanimous. Item 44, financial statements. So we'll go through them one by one.
I wouldn't suggest you do really.
I don't mean in detail. So part one.
Transaction by transaction.
Yeah. So have we got any questions on bank reconciliations? Any questions on cash books? Any on trial balance? Any on balance sheet? Any on cash and investment reconciliation? Any on income and expenditure? Anything on earmarked reserves? Anything on schedule of payments? Anything on the VAT return? Okay. Richard, have you got any comments?
No, my comments are on the one that comes under point 4, where it's the more up to date paperwork, to be honest.
Okay. Part 2 for June. Any comments on any of those 9 items? For July, any comments on any of those 9 items? Part 4, income and expenditure by budget heading. So we're looking at O on the appendices, and this is the bit you want to speak on, is it, Richard?
Well, I mean, I've laid it out here, the things that I think need pointing out. I mean, the important one is in the first bit where it's, I basically note that the income of the parish council year to date is about 151,000, but our expenditure is 148,000. We're not getting any more income really until November. We've got, at the moment, I think we've got like £20,000 left in our working bank account, so we are not going to have enough money by a long way in that bank account to be able to spend our normal expenditure. In the last sort of few months, in terms of how much we spent a month, so like I say, I think we've got 21,000 in our working account. In April we spent 9,000, in May we spent 38,000, in June we spent 56,000, in July we spent 34,000, in August we spent 18,000. So 21,000 is not going to get us to November, particularly given you've just given away 3,000. You've got 70,000 to give away next month potentially, so there's not going to be enough money.
Okay.
So I do come to that later in the thing. The issues being, as you can see, we've given 10,000 on the library from the earmark reserve, we've given 10,000 to the civic from the earmark reserve, and 7,000 from general reserves. We had that huge election bill for 25,000 quid. Which if it was spread over the year, we wouldn't really notice particularly, but it's really helpful.
Am I right in saying we're not saying there's a problem here?
No.
We need to move money from one account to another.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
No, we've got loads of money. It's
I
just
started reading this bit, I thought,
we've got loads of money. It's just
in the wrong place.
in different places.
yeah.
But that's later down the agenda. And then the next bit about income. So as is obvious, we've had 50% of the precept, we've had 50% of the special expenses grant. The next round will be in November. We've had 100% of allotments and garages. The toilets income is on target, and the investment income, as you can see, is way over what it was predicted. So that's good. Unfortunately, as you know, the shop tenant is likely to give up the lease, although it's slightly tenuous at the moment. He's not actually handed in he's not saying he's giving it up yet. He's just saying he might do. So we think he's probably seeing how the bank holiday will be and perhaps going from there. But Jenny is talking to people anyway about possible solutions if that does happen. And on the expenditure side, as you can see, the salaries are pretty much bang on target. Training is going to be problematic. To be honest, until Jen pointed it out, I didn't realise there was this provision in our staff training policy where we were meant to add £800 for if a member of staff was on the silk training. So that should have really been added when we did the budget at the start of the year, but I didn't know it was a thing, to be honest. So I think what we're going to do is Jen's going to take something to council, which will basically say that we can spend some from general reserves as need be for that particular provision. Election wise, I've just said insurance, you're aware, is over because of Homley Library coming on. Publications and publicity, I've just made the point about the £1,000 for Homley Show. Homos Topograph is going to be quite a bit over budget. It has been to service, no, it's been Case, yeah, sorry, it's been to Case. And Case are taking that to council for approval of the additional expenditure, so that'll be down to council to decide. Churchyard is going to be over budget. I think we probably underestimated it this year, but you will need to be pumping that up. I was astounded the amount of hours it takes to mow the churchyard. It takes like 30 hours. Sorry.
So, which committee is it that controls the?
Well, I was just going to say that there's the same thing really, that I think it's something that we'll perhaps be looking at on the service provision, that to the extent that we are able to, because as Rich I think has pointed out to me, there is a legal responsibility here. It's a bit interesting.
So the issue that's flagged up with this previously has been why this was the only one that was ever taken on. The history of it is a bit irrelevant now. We're lumbered with it. One of the issues in the past has always been that we've needed to get the diocese faculty. So the church trustees are quite keen to write up a whole load of jobs, but without getting diocese faculties to approve it all, as if it's then the responsibility of the parish council to. There also seems to have been quite extensive mission creep from when it first started. So if you compare what's happening at New Mill now compared to what was happening before parish council started to, if you like, be more helpful, it just seems to be that every step forward the parish council takes, everybody involved in that church is taking one step further back. So there is the responsibility for the closed graveyard, but to my mind, that's massively, that legal responsibility falls a long, long way away from what the trustees of the church have always implied and suggested. So the legal responsibility is to make sure it's safe. Not that it's neat and tidy, not that it's mown, none of that. And yet, we're incurring expenditure where other churches you'd expect, because the church graveyard is around the church building. So some of the works would fall to us. But other churches, that's where your friends and volunteers are doing it. It just seems that because there's the opportunity to pass the work on to the parish, that's what's happening.
Would it be okay if we left this to service provision to have a look at it in a bit more depth? Because I've only just started looking at this. And I did visit the churchyard with John and looked at the issues, but I've not really had that opportunity to look at it in more depth. I was surprised about when it was pointed out to me what that legal responsibility was. It did surprise me, and I'm not sure it's exactly as you suggest, but can we leave it for the moment and come back to it?
So but I would suggest that in terms of the legal responsibility, rather than taking that through the trustees or the diocese, that it's the clerk gets clear guidance from YLCA and NAMC as to exactly what parish council's responsibility is for a closed graveyard, because there'll be a whole lot of that will be open to interpretation, and what might be happening somewhere else isn't necessarily what the law would require. And I bet we're being used by examples elsewhere of what councils are doing, but in terms of the who we get steer from, it's check.
I think we're doing less than the law says at the moment, though.
You think so?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
which is why I think we should just leave this for the moment, that we explore that in a bit more depth and then come back when we need to look at that financial responsibility.
Okay. Well, it's a service provision matter, so yeah.
Can I just ask how much money you are giving as a parish council?
It's not much. I mean, it only really pays for John to do the mowing at the moment. I think there's 750 quid a year budget. However, if you look at the actual law, it says we've got to pay for the walls basically, which we haven't been doing. You know, that we have to pay for the.
Are we talking like hundreds of pounds or thousands?
Well, he described to me I mean, it's not just a mowing he ends up doing, although he declines doing a lot of other stuff that he's asked.
We paid for a JCB last year.
Yes, well, you know, if the headstones collapse, he ends up having to deal with that, which involves machinery.
Okay, so
we need to look at it.
It is a service provision one, but what they do elsewhere when the expense is falling on them is they decide that we're going to drop 30 headstones in one go rather than one at a time, and they do it proactively. When it comes to repairing walls, if there's a danger of collapse, they repair them. If there's a safety issue, they repair them. If not, it's just like the thousands of walls you'll see all the way around this valley, which is, you know, they've seen better days. But this is where I suggest there's some mission creep in between what responsibilities. So you can have some. There can be quite a bit of greyness around what the legal obligation is, and I can tell you this much: for the ones that the parish doesn't have, where that legal responsibility rests with Kirklees will tell you, as long as you can physically get into that graveyard and there's no immediate danger, that's your lot, which is a lot further than perhaps what we're doing at Newman. But yeah, one for service provision.
And then the last bit was basically about budgets not being on target, and as in previous years, we've got to worry about whether the climate emergency budget is going to be spent. I mean, we've got very few meetings to actually make decisions about money, but they've got a lot of money. They've got, is it 14,000 in the earmark reserve as well. You know, they've got to really crack on and be identifying ways to spend this money, you know.
Yeah. So again, whilst it's the work of another committee, we've got our responsibility for, if you like, budget oversight and monitoring. And it has been disappointing, shall we say, how much resources have been allocated for how it's not being used. And that has left us a bit lopsided on our budgeting process. So, whilst it's good to underspend on expenses, it's not good to underspend on what you're supposed to deliver if the reason for the underspend is because you've not done it. And I think we might maybe need to be a bit more robust with that committee when it comes to that budget setting committee, the budget setting meeting, in terms of what we're asking for. Because, correct me if I'm mistaken, but this is the year that we're likely to have a bit of a crossover between income and expenditure, and with our ever increasing expenditure, we might well be in a world of having a put up a preset if all those budget requests keep coming in a similar vein to previous years. So I think that's just one to have in mind now.
On the next Finance and Management Committee meeting, one of the things that is likely to be an agenda item, because there have been some discussions about this, is whether there's any mileage in CASE becoming a grant giving committee. Because one of the issues is it has this budget, it's very difficult to have sort of parish council led and run projects regarding it, but there could well be a case for arguing that, you know, if it was within the gift of the committee to look at grant applications from other organisations and the projects they're running that fit in with the principles and objectives of that committee, that might be a way of tackling that in the longer term. I'm just giving a point of information.
And that's coming to this committee or going to full?
Well, my advice has been that we should get the view of the Finance and Management Committee regarding that before we proceed very far down the road with it.
Are we still in a position where service provision are giving grants?
Yes, Christmas, grants, CCTV, there's still some that come under service provision.
Yeah. Well, and those are the ones where we're looking to move to more formal arrangements now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we'd come to an agreement, possibly at full council, but possibly not. I don't remember that this would be the only grant giving committee.
That did happen, but then it was kind of undone. Subsequently, it was undone.
Well, so that was the direction of travel, and part of that was to make sure that there was this consistent approach and view towards it. And I have to say, if you were asking me now, Jen, I'd be saying my personal view was no. But we'll wait to see what's submitted and we'll put it to the committee, and then the committee can make the recommendation to full council. But there's yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Thank you. So,
And then earmark reserves, so it's all laid out there. So we've still got this £2,000 in the other community assets, which was for their scout hut, but we said we'd give it to them when it was nearly finished, so it was basically to finish it off, but they're still a long way from doing that. The election fund, like it says, we're going to need to build that up to 5,000 or say 7,500 every year till it hits about 30,000 again by in 4 years' time. Civic's now down to 0, and as is the Homley Library Energy earmark reserve. There's still 15,000 in Homley Library for capital related projects. And we've still got this 50,000 in the children's playgrounds pot, which is going to council, is it, Jim? Playgrounds.
There's a working group.
Working group's been set up for that, right, thank you. And then we've got the, I think it's about 14,000 in the earmark reserve for climate emergency projects, and then we've got these two planning related ones, Holmesworth Market and the road safety one. The road safety ones, as it said, is likely to be some of that spent fairly soon, although they don't seem to want to send us an invoice for what we've asked for again. Well, I have asked. No, of course not. I have asked for them to send us an invoice, but yeah, it's not been forthcoming. And as it says, council can set up earmark reserves, whenever a council meets, so if you decide something needs an earmark reserve, that can be voted on at council whenever you hold whether it's held.
Councillor Wilson.
The EMR for getting the red book in the Old First Market, I don't think that was needed anymore. I get that they had a grant from Kirk Lee.
Probably right.
Yeah.
I wonder about the Scouts one as well. We did make that commitment to support them, but how far are they on with it? Have you had an update on them?
Well, probably not for 6 months. I'd have to ask.
So what I'd be minded to say is that actually to tell them to come back again when they actually get closer to it, because we've carried this for, is it 2 years?
I think so. Yeah.
So it's not about not wanting to support them. It's a case of if they're not close to it, then really it'd be better to withdraw the grant and invite them to come back. And actually, if they came back at a later date, they'd probably help secure more funding.
What will we do with the EMRs that aren't spent then?
Or they just go back to general.
We can just deconsolidate an earmark reserve whatever you like. Not you personally, the council.
We can't earmark it with something else.
Yeah, you can earmark it.
Earmark it for a holiday in South America.
I wasn't quite thinking. It's can't.
No, I mean that's where it's this is the flexible. This is more flexible than the budget. The budget, once you've set it, is set forever basically. But this you can play around with it. If you're thinking about money for the civic, you can reconstitute the general reserves into an earmark reserve, or other earmark reserves. You can disconsolidate them and create a new earmark reserve.
Did you have something specifically in mind?
it's early days yet, but because I know where I'm with this scene, this is just made a reference to them, and it might be in the fullness of time that we perhaps consider another one. And there's £3,000 towards it.
Of planning's money as well. I mean, it's obviously easier if it's your money in a sense.
I'll just say about the scouts, that in the previous communication we've had with them, we have assured them that money is there for them to draw upon when they need it.
Okay.
But how long would we?
I don't think the time limit was set on it, so just making you aware of what we've said in the past.
In a sense, it doesn't affect us if it's there. It just sits there.
Well, yeah, but the whole purpose of the earmarked reserves is it's for a specific purpose, and if that purpose is drifting out of sight, then it doesn't really meet the remit, does it?
Because it might look like we're fiddling our general reserves to go into what they're allowed to be.
Can I suggest we have a conversation with the scouts and come back to the next finance management with that one?
Kind of, I'm going to say, you can put the question to them, how long do you think it's going to likely to be before you need that money, because we can't hold it indefinitely because the accounts. If you give them our understanding where we're at, then they might be able to push it.
And it might be worthwhile just saying to them that, you know, if they do come back in the future, they'll be able to apply for up to £5,000, won't they? So,
We did tell them to apply again.
yeah. Okay,
Sorry, so have I done all that? Yes, I have.
Yeah. So we're all okay with the earmarked reserves as they currently are? Okay, so we'll just
Well,
note.
apart from, is that going to be a thing for planning then? Because obviously I'm doing the planning in the next committee meeting.
I think
You
it's
want
too
to
early to say
recommend to
because
council?
we haven't even got this candidate yet, so, you know, I think we wanted it to.
So we'll just leave them on hold for now, and then
I can see it in the future, that's all I'm
Yes.
saying.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
thank you. Okay. So item 45, the A gap. So surprisingly to know, nobody wanted to come and look at it. Okay. Item 46, tenancies. So I think Jen's alluded to this, that we're not entirely sure what's happening with the GAT side of Collie, don't we?
Yeah, so he emailed Rich to say that he was thinking about giving up the tenancy because it hadn't been profitable over the summer. So Rich passed it on to me. I've then emailed out to say, okay, well, you know, this is your current lease, this is your current tenancy agreement you're on, which is a rolling week by week one anyway. If he wanted to give up the tenancy for the end of September, then he needs to let us know by the end of August. So he's aware of those deadlines, and that's one of the reasons why I think we've probably not had a reply from him, because he'll just wait and see what this weekend is like maybe before he makes up his mind. But there is a possibility that Cleese may want to make use of the unit for a while at least, while all the alterations are going on in Home and at the moment,
We're putting the rent up then.
at the moment, I'm waiting to hear back from the project leader who is due back from leave at the end of this month.
Okay. Well, it's good to know there's a reserve plan. So part 2, to note all the tenancy agreements for the allotments and garages have been returned. Move on to item 47, internal control check. So was Councillor Lyle able to do?
She did, yeah. She was very committed. She spent probably an hour and a half here. She found mistakes that I had already disclosed, but she did find them. So
Training consultants had left for it, you know.
No, well, you know, there was a time where I forgot to change the standing order, and she found that error. So that was very good. It was very good that she was able to spot these kind of things. And it was just tick basically. So it was all good.
Okay. So as Councillor Wiles isn't here, if there's anything that she wants to bring to our attention, that'll be for the next council meeting. So could we have it as just as an agenda item? If just
Okay.
1 minute will suffice, hopefully. Okay, item 48. So banking. So first part, to consider approving councillors for the mandates on the CCLA public sector deposit funds. So the suggestion is that the chair of this committee, myself, and the chair and vice chair of the council. So I forget what that is now.
Councillor Black and Councillor Colin, you.
Oh, it's council. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So it was a vice chair. Yeah. So the three of us are named on the mandate. So if I'm happy to move that, I don't have something to second it. Councillor Wilson, are we all in agreement with that? Okay. Unanimous.
It's never been used, that account, so it's not that important.
And then for the Handelsbanken account, it's the same again. So I'm happy to move that. Do I have somebody who will second the proposal? Councillor Wilson, all those in favour? Again, unanimous. So the bigger bit is to consider closing the Handelsbanken account. So there's a few points to consider there between how much it costs and what the alternative is. And this is one where we're looking to move to Unity, is it?
Well, either as I've said, either it could go to HSBC and we spend the money from HSBC, or it goes to Unity Trust. Either way, as long as we have money, basically we need it to go into our working bank account, whichever that is. It makes no difference.
So the first decision you want is that we approve the closure of the bank account, and the second bit is where we're going to send it to.
Yeah, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, Rich, is there any, in particular with the cash flow issues that we flagged up earlier, is there any particular account that needs to land in that would help ease that particular issue?
Well, it depends on the time. Well, it all depends on whether you move to Unity Trust, I suppose. I mean, I think the motion just needs to say that it moves to our working bank account and doesn't state whether that's Unity Trust or.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Collins. All those in approval? Unanimous. Okay. So we're on to the part 5, which is the Unity Trust. Do you just want to give us a rough?
Yeah, I mean, so the reason we were encouraged to move to Unity Trust, as it says, our internal auditor suggested it. It's because as it's presented, as our banking is done now, it's not very well protected from fraud. So if I was somebody who was intent on fraud, I could steal a lot of money without anybody finding out, really, because I set the payments up and I authorised the payments as well.
Is this not being flagged up by the internal auditor?
Yes, what I just said. So the thing that Unity Trust does is that it would still be me setting up the payments, but I couldn't authorise the payments. So it'll be down to any of the mandated councillors to do so. My suggestion is that, like with the HSBC account, it's the chairs of committee. I did ask the chairs if they would be willing to put themselves forward for this purpose. Unfortunately, I didn't hear from Councillor Tom Dixon, so perhaps we just go. I've emailed him a couple of times. So
He has been away.
He has been away. Well, it's been a few weeks, and so.
Okay.
So that's the one bit, and then the second bit. At the moment, if we're paying for Microsoft 365 or Dropbox, it's coming out of our money. So sometimes, probably in a year, I might spend 600 quid for the parish council out of my own money, which I do get back. I mean, and I do get it back quickly. But nevertheless, it's a bit odd.
Well, it's not neat for audit either, is it?
No. So this is essentially a credit card, but the way it's set it up is it's automatically deducted. What you've spent is automatically deducted at the end of the month. And like I've said here, you basically set a limit. So, the limit wouldn't need to be very high. I've said sort of £200 a transaction. I think the most I've spent is maybe 120 quid, something like that. And then maybe 500 a month. Occasionally you might get where you've got Dropbox antivirus and Zoom or something like that, all coming out in the same month, and that might be approaching, say, 300 or so, but
Okay.
that to me seems sensible, and it's not causing an immense risk to the parish council. I'm not going to run away because I've got nicked 500 quid off you, I suspect. So.
Well, I'll move the proposal then that we establish the Unity Trust account, and we also sign up to the multiplayer card, and that we have a mandate limits of £200 a transaction, £500 a month. We can review that in the future if needed. That adequate? Okay, so do I have a seconder? Councillor Brooke. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Item 49 then, financial records for the website. So to know, financial records for May, June, July have been added to the website. Item 50. Identification of Home Valley Parish Council and Finance and Management Committee priorities and key actions for 23-27. So, I have had a message along with the other chairs from the chair of the council, Councillor Blacker, about establishing key priorities for the council and for the standing committees. So I've had the opportunity to have a bit of a think about this, but we need to form a view of the committee. So has this been something that members have thought about before coming tonight? I'm guessing Councillor Bailey will have done with a different hat on, and I think Councillor Collin will have done with a different hat on, and certainly Councillor Blacker has. But the key bit that we're being asked for is what our key priorities are. So, if you like, I'll share mine. So, number one is about maintaining budget control, and the kind of examples I would give for that would be the amount of reserves, what's earmarked, what isn't, how budgets are being spent or not spent, and at budgeting time it would be a case of perhaps being a little bit more robust where there's calls for funding where actually the action's not following up on that. So the example I would give for that would be in respect of climate action work. Okay. The other area is banking arrangements, and that's a fundamental one. So this issue around authorisation, dual authorisation, has been around for a heck of a long time. The issue has always been moving from cheques onto the digital bit. Cheques is like living back in the bloody 1980s. But actually having a robust system that allows you to set up all the transactions we've got and then authorise them has eluded us today, so Unity Trust is a great way forward for that. But for this committee, I do think the banking arrangements are a really important one. Not just for fraud prevention, but also for, if you like, the operational activities of the council, just to make sure things can be done simply and straightforward. I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of officers using their cards to pay for stuff and claiming back. It muddies things up, and to be brutally honest, if you did have somebody come in and look at the ACAR and they wanted to look at some of the underlying bits and they saw your credit card with some stuff on there, they're more likely to form a totally mistaken understanding of what's going on. Another area, and this kind of runs into the banking arrangements, it's more relevant now because we're back into a world of actual interest rates. So the other bit is are we securing a good return on our reserves? And that's one thing I know that Richard's looked at, but when your choice is between 0.1 and 0.15, there's not much of an incentive, whereas nowadays we will be approaching that, which then is why we need to get a bit cuter perhaps with what our reserves are, what's likely to go out and what isn't, how much can we set aside and for how long. Okay. So the other area is within the grants process. So to me, one of the things I'd really like us to see with the grants is just to make it a very simple process, as simple as we can do. That's not to say that, not particularly changing anything that we've got, it's more about, I suppose, if there's tweaks to be made to it. And at this stage, I'm not proposing anything. There's quite a few bits I've got in mind, but I think Councillor Blacker commented on this. We've only just changed it, so we really need to see how it operates. So I wouldn't really imagine making any proposals until we've completed that second round. Just got to see how it goes. And members need to form a view of how they feel about it. Do we need to tweak it? Is it working? Isn't it working? But those are the key aspects that I think for our committee. I've had time to think about this. I'm quite conscious nobody else really has. Does anybody have any comments about what I've raised, or whether they think that's wrong, right, or other stuff needs to go in?
Sorry, keep it first.
I mean, in terms of kind of overarching aims, I think was pretty sound to me. Just one comment really on the grants process. I wonder if we ought to think about identifying priorities for grants in particular years as well. You know, perhaps identifying a particular group or particular theme.
So just by example, we might talk about young people.
Exactly.
Or the elderly or whatever.
Yes, the elderly, yeah. Although these people are more disadvantaged in.
Right. So, and the other aspect to that is, and it does fit in a lot better with service provision, although service provision is then brought into the whole issue around procurement because of the amounts, but the other one is about the repeats. So one of the things I'm keen, when I said about simplifying the grants, I want to make it so that no organisation is daunted by it. I don't think we need to be at all, but some of it is, there may be things where we can tweak it to make it easier and more accessible. But I would also like us to have a look at which of the grants that come in front of us actually can we say, well, we'd like to support one of them. And off the top of my head, those would be, if you like, the festival ones. So we know what they've done, we've seen what they've done, and they're going to carry on doing that. And so that might be something that we could, rather than touch every single year, we could move further into. Now, we've not done it with food and drink, but there are new things coming up.
We'll just make it where it's gone past 9.
Yeah, so
We've done that already. We already have it that the repeat ones that we agree to be repeat ones will simply be asked to send in an up-to-date financial statement and won't have to do a complete application every year.
we haven't agreed which ones those are going to be though.
Oh no, as they come up, we'll be going through them.
So thank you. So we've gone past 9 o'clock, so I'd just like to move that we extend the meeting to conclude business. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Blacker, all in favour? Unanimous. Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, just a couple of other points. In some ways, they may already come in within what you've already said, Charles, but I'm thinking about things like, that principle of sort of longer term planning, not just the repeats and so on, but, as we've spoken about before, where there are major projects where we've got long term commitments, working towards that position where we can enable them and us to have a longer term planning, and particularly within the EMRs and so on, I think. Also, I put down about the principle of value for money, which I think is already incumbent on us anyway, I think legally, if I remember rightly, but, look at, hanging on to that as a core principle, and that then feeds into other things about the evaluations and grant evaluations and things like that. So is there value for money, that we're achieving, and those that we give grants to are achieving?
Okay, thank you. Any more? So, are we all comfortable with those suggestions that I put out, that Councillor Black has put out, and Councillor Bale has put out? So, can I move it that we'll adopt those as our submission to the chair? Okay, Councillor Bale, are you happy to second that?
Yeah.
Lovely. Be a bit awkward if you all in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. So, item 51, training and development. So, to note council training commitments to date, to consider further actions regarding councillor training. So, Rich, have you got a comment to make on this?
I think it was more from the clerk really. It was just
Sorry.
Yeah, so what I would suggest is after this meeting, when I confirm with councillors that they've been booked on training or whatever, the evaluation form that's been attached here, I'll send that out with the confirmation. And the evaluation forms will go to full council so that all councillors get a chance to see them. And it will just be like a standing item to note each full council meeting. I'll just sort of collate them so that people can benefit from other people's experiences.
Thank you. We're just noting those, are we?
Yeah, so you're noting the training commitments to date, and if you, I don't know.
Do you want an approval on? Okay, well,
Yeah.
we'll do it. So I'll move it. So to approve the evaluation return for councillors councillors and officers attending trading events. So I'm moving that. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Colin, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 52, publicising the work of Lone Valley Parish Council. So, I think it is, we touched on this in terms of the evaluation and the photos. I think it really is important that we make sure that people know what we're supporting. There was an interesting comment that Richard picked up about the Food and Drink Festival. It was quite disappointing that one of the organisers commented about, had been asked by the media about the precept increase. And they've commented, well, what did they do for us? And we've been like, well,
We gave you
maybe you need to see his names on the
we put a tap in for you, we let you use the water on the toilets with all your stalls, we give you about 6 different things.
and that's your group. So there's a bit where I just think, it's a never-ending battle to get the information out there. I think we do a good job of it. I think the reality of it is, as soon as you put council on anything, most people will be, the interest will fall elsewhere. But I think, is there anything specifically from tonight that we want to publicise? We've got a lot of the stuff from the evaluations, but I don't know what's already gone out there.
Well, nothing from that, nothing from the evaluations really.
But from the original project,
Well, yeah, but only in kind of, a sentence about what we've given and what it's
Can we not
for.
use, given that we want to, the point about we want evaluations, some of them have really nice photographs. Can we not publish a range of those photographs saying, here's the feedback we had from some of the things we funded?
Yeah, I'll probably have to ask first, perhaps it's something that's needed on the form that we need to say, are you giving permission to share anything you supply on this form? I don't think it says that, so that probably needs doing. So I'll ask them and then I will because I think
People are more likely to look at pictures than a set of accounts.
Well, I mean, they do, aren't they? The pictures of the changing rooms and that sort of stuff.
Okay. Well, I think that's a great proposal, and I'm going to second that. Can we take a vote on that, please? That's unanimous. So
Rich and I took a decision last year when the Girl Scouts, who we paid for the coach to go and watch the Women's Euros, sent in lovely photographs, and with parental permission to publish them. And Rich and I both thought publishing pictures of little girls who live in the valley and could be relatively easily found was probably not a good idea. It's a shame they were lovely photos. They were obviously having a lovely time.
Maybe we should have sent them to Australia. Okay, well, look, all that remains really is for me to thank everybody for attending and for the 10-minute overrun. Thanks for bearing with us, but I think the discussion around the grants was an important one. I think actually, in truth, it'll save us a hell of a lot more than 10 minutes in the future. So, thank you everyone.
Well done keeping it down.
Yeah, well,